Morning, everyone. Yeah, thank you for inviting me today. Yeah, I'm very excited to be presenting and giving you a bit of an overview. So my name's Catherine Blackburn. I'm the Environment Sustainability Lead within Lang O'Rourke, but I cover the specialist businesses part of the business. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro in terms of how our business is set up, because it's slightly different to some of the other main contractors. So the idea as well is so as part of Lang O'Rourke, we are set up initially as a principal contractor, so a tier one main contractor on site. However, our vision in terms of how we deliver on site is our founder, Ray O'Rourke, who's now our chairman, was very keen to try and take about 60% of our construction to the off-site capability to try and make things much leaner and efficient. Construction is still quite old school and very labour-intensive heavy, so there was definitely a drive to try and move the business to a more sort of automotive and aerospace industry where it's much more slick and it's the precision and the efficiency is much more consistent in terms of driving things forward. And the idea was that we'd try and deliver 60% of that off-site, and the main aim is sort of, driving those modern methods of construction. So the part of the business that I'm going to be talking about is Explore Manufacturing, which is a precast concrete facility, which is based up in Worksop in Nottinghamshire. So the vision from Ray taking this off-site was how Explore Manufacturing was born, and it's been operating since 2009 now. So we've been in operation about 16 years. We employ direct workforce of about 325 people, which we're proud to sort of say that with 85% of that workforce live within about 10 miles of where we work. So we're seen as being quite a keen employer within that area. On average, we produce about 20,000 precast concrete products, which we ship to our clients. We provide both internally to Lang O'Rourke projects, but then we also provide to external clients as well. And at the moment, that's about a 50-50 split, which when we first started out, it was primarily just to Lang O'Rourke projects. But yeah, our order book's definitely widened in sort of the wider market. In terms of investment, there's been about £300 million of investment to date in terms of improving the facility, and that continues over and over again, just in terms of the opportunities that we're looking at in terms of how we can become much more efficient and less carbon intensive as well. And we aim for, so about 60% of our product is standardised. The idea of that is obviously, again, it makes it much more consistent, it's much leaner, and in terms of the importance of that product, the output and performance is much better as well from a quality perspective. So just to give you an idea and insight into the factory and the reason why I'm showing you this, we have about 4 different lines, and those lines operate slightly differently. So when we're talking about environmental product declarations and looking at the information that's going in them, we're trying to account for what that's going to do to our product and how we can understand the impact of that. So we have the high-speed carousel, so that mainly focuses on like wall and flooring components. That's a much more automated line, so there's very little sort of labour intervention in there, and it's very quick, and we get a lot of product going through there. When we get to the bespoke carousel, there's a bit more labour-intensive work going on there just because of the nature of the products that are going through. So we can have non-insulated products and insulated complex products going through there, and also structural frames. And then that's the same with the bespoke static as well. So depending on the size of that product will depend what line that's going to. And then we also have a civils line. So our civils line at the moment is heavily focused on infrastructure projects. So we've got a lot of stuff coming through for the likes of HS2, and we've been working with Network Rail in terms of modular bridges and those kind of things as well. So the bits that we're generating out of there are very sort of, big pieces of kit that come out of there. So they're, again, manufactured very differently. They're all fed through the reinforcement hall, so all the rebars then fed through to them. And yeah, it does vary, you notice as you go through the factory, just the change in terms of the manufacturing process between each one and what the inputs and the impacts of that are as well. So I'll talk a little bit about this at the moment, but when we look at our EPDs at the moment in terms of our data collection, and it's really interesting to see that what everyone sort of gripes from the initial themes at the start, and then from the Schneider's perspective as well. The way that we're collecting data at the moment is very much on a whole wide facility perspective. So when we've started to do these EPDs, some of the products that we thought would actually be much better performing, because of the way that we're utilising that data, we're not actually seeing the true impacts of how that is being much better. So the high-speed line, we know, would have a much better performance from a sustainability perspective, but unfortunately we're unable to sort of like pull that through at the moment. So that's our sort of baseline at the moment, is this is where we are. We know, in terms of what we're capturing at the moment, we know it's not the best, but it's given us a really good baseline to know how we need to get better. So to give you an idea of how those kits of parts all come together, we've recently completed our Everton football stadium. I don't know whether we've got any fans in the audience, but just to give you an idea in terms of all those different components, in the sort of bottom right-hand corner of the stadium, this is that section in there with a number of our different products. So we've got the mega plank, the single skin facade, the beam, the column, the lattice plank, and the solid wall. And it does give a good combination, sort of the bespoke components as well as the standardized components, getting into sort of that whole building approach. As well, when we're looking at that 60% off-site manufacturing capability and we're trying to improve the performance of our product, it just gives you an idea of how much we can then influence within a building. If we can get much better in terms of the performance of that, what that can then do to the whole life cycle of that building going forward as well. So what was our business drive to get environmental product declarations? So obviously we were getting a lot of client requirements coming through, and we were getting contract requirements, also from projects that, even through our Langeroort projects where we had BREEAM on there, the material credits under there, if we had EPDs in our products, it was giving our projects much better sort of performance and success under those credits, particularly when we've got projects going for outstanding and the excellent ratings as well. It really supported from that side. Obviously, most businesses now will have a carbon reduction targets in terms of how what they're aiming to. So we recently, last year, signed up to the Science Based Targets Initiative. We've now got a carbon reduction roadmap in terms of how we want to get there. And we've got midterm reduction targets for 2030, as well as sort of trying to be a net zero business before 2050. When we looked at our footprint and the baseline of our, which was from FY23, 88% of our total carbon emissions was from the materials and the services. In terms of us trying to drive much better performance of our products, that what we can do with that 88% is absolutely huge, and that's where we see we can make some really key drivers and some big changes in terms of how we operate. And then our people. So going forward with our people, we wanted to make sure that when we started this process that we were taking them on a journey as well. We found that sometimes we have a project coordination team that seemed to be the key interface between our clients and our suppliers and various different projects. We had to educate them in terms of what EPDs were, so we can make sure that they were saying it correctly and knew what it was about. Even sometimes I think when clients ask me for EPDs, I don't think they know, thank you, exactly what an EPD is and how it's meant to be read, and how it feeds into everything else as well. So we have a series called Sustainability Series. Sorry. Thank you. Which we communicate to the whole wide business. We did an EPD session on that to try and get as much information out there to the business to let them know this is the journey that we're on and what the impacts are around EPDs and how we can influence them. So if we can once we understand what our performance is, how we can then become much better. And it also gives a real key opportunity to work with our designers, our procurement team, our suppliers, and our project coordination team, and taking them all on the same journey to know that decisions happening at certain stages in the life cycle, and how that can influence the output as well and the performance of that product. So it was really key that we just didn't do this sort of as a tick box exercise. We wanted to make sure that we were really going to get some value out of it. So our sustainability strategy was launched in 2021, and EPDs was some key deliverable that sat underneath that. It did take us quite a while to develop them. It wasn't a quick process for us, and I'll go into a little bit more detail around that. So the challenges. So I mentioned already of doing that whole awareness piece and what that meant through from sort of client through to contractor. In terms of delivering that and making sure people were understanding exactly the purpose of why we were doing it and what it was meant to be feeding into. Then the second point around collation of data. So we had a lot of data and it was in all various different formats, and sometimes trying to make sense of that data can take a very long time. So we had to streamline that and make sure that was fit for purpose, that we were feeding into the model. We also did a piece of work in understanding the information that we were getting suppliers, how many of them had EPDs that could then feed into us, and we could understand the validity of the performance of the products the materials we were getting from them. And we set up sort of performance dashboards around that to try and get much better quality data as well from our suppliers. So there's a key piece there with the procurement team trying to drive that through, and that's still continually happening. But yeah, data was definitely a long one that took us a long time to get to. And then also we wanted to make sure we validated that data before we then put it in the model. So we got an external consultant then to support us with that to make sure the data that we were putting in was correct. Resourcing, one thing we were really keen to do was try and deliver it in-house. So we really took ownership of understanding what the EPD was and how we could influence it. So once we started this journey, we had people nominated to be able to do the resourcing part. I don't know what happened, but each time we got someone allocated, they decided to leave. So it took us a little while to get that through. But I will shout out to Graham as well. I know he's not here, but from One Click LCA, who's been absolutely brilliant in terms of supporting us through that journey and helping us upskill people and bring them up to speed of how to use the tool. And yeah, he's just been great. And yeah, I don't think we would have been able to do it without him, to be honest. And then the final point around concept to sort of publishing timeframe. I mentioned before this was a long journey. I think when we initially looked at the model, we're like, oh, this should be pretty easy. We'll just get data in springs and it'll come out really quickly. That wasn't the case. It took us quite a long time, and we wanted to be really sort of happy with the information that we were putting in there. So they were sort of the key things that we looked at as we went through. So where are we now? So in terms of our EPD development process, we are really happy to announce that we've got 5 EPDs in place. When we first started this journey as well, we put an EPD strategy together to understand what products we wanted to focus on right at the start. So when we did this a couple of years ago, the products that you can see that we've got highlighted with green, so we've got the lattice plank, twin wall, beam and column, and the single phase facade. The beam and column we did as one EPD because they were very similar in the makeup of the product. And then we also got brick facade on there as well because that was slightly different to the single phase facade. They were our key products with the clients we were working with at that time. That was the key output of what was coming out of our production facility. So that's what we focused on. Recently, we have become much more infrastructure focused in terms of what's coming out of our factory at the moment. So we have got our infrastructure products lined up to be the next batch that will be coming out as well as solid walls and slab and mega plank as well, which have become increasingly sort of popular with some of the work that we're doing as well. So we're hoping to get them sent off for external verification within the next few weeks. We've got the models and sort of sorted at the moment. So yeah, we're in those final stages. So we should have 10 then to hopefully cover us going forward, which would be great. So we've pretty much got nearly the whole suite of our key products covered. We also, what's great with this process as well, and us being able to have sort of ownership of the tool, is in terms of us looking at new materials, looking at different ways of performance, or sometimes projects want an EPD for every single element of the building, and that's not necessarily needed. So you were able to demonstrate that the tweaks that you were having within your product was very minor and wasn't really impacting that EPD. So it didn't really justify doing another full EPD. So that helps satisfy a lot of the sort of the conversations from that side. But they've definitely given us, in terms of clarity and transparency with our clients, it's massively supported the conversation there and making sure that we're really comfortable in terms of the performance of our product and what that means for us. One of the things as well that we're really sort of, one of the benefits we got from this is when I mentioned about that data collection process and how we're looking at it from a manufacturing site-wide perspective, we have actually been able to identify some sort of the key impacts within our manufacturing processes. So we were actually using quite a significant amount of water, so we're supplying with water from a borehole. And I think because we weren't paying for that water, it kind of went unnoticed, whereas I think if we were paying from mains, there would have been a few questions from the commercial team as to why we were using so much. But what we did, we put a LoRaWAN sensor system across our site to try and identify sort of key use areas and what was going on there. And we've actually been able to reduce our water usage by 67% in the last year with that going in there. And I think without us doing that discovery phase and understanding sort of key impacts within our manufacturing operation sort of area, we would have been able to sort of highlight that. So we're now then pushing that along to sort of energy as well. So we want to understand the key performance of our machines and the production lines. So if we can get to a point where I know I've got lattice going through a high-speed line, I know the water, energy, waste and everything that's coming out there is purely just associated with that product and that line, and it will make it much more reliable in terms of what we're doing. Another area that's great is, so we are certified to ISO 14001 and 50001. We've got the auditors in their last audit said to us, the next time they come, they want to understand how we're managing our life cycle impacts and our products throughout our whole process. And this gives us a key framework and a tool to demonstrate that and show how we're doing that. So from a compliance perspective as well, it's really good for us to demonstrate that going forward too. So the future, I think definitely sort of referring to William's presentation earlier as well. My utopia is trying to understand what's the impact at each stage of the manufacturing process and along each line. So if we can get much better on that granular data perspective and we can understand that, the clarity and the information that we'll get from our products will be much more better. I think when we initially, the designers and that are looking at the carbon impact of our products, they essentially just look at the materials and they don't look at everything else that goes with it when we're looking at that whole life cycle assessment. And I think it's really critical to understand that and what changes we can make. As a business, we've already invested, so our ovens, where the product goes into to cure, that was previously gas fed. We've just upgraded them so they're going to be electric fed. So from a sustainability perspective and performance perspective, they're going to be much better. So it's that kind of thing that's helping us to understand what we need to do to get much better in terms of our performance. We also know as we go to lower carbon concrete, they actually have a longer curing time. So we need that cleaner energy being fed into those systems to make sure it's not going to have a negative impact on the performance. Also our eco-frog that we have our batching plant as well. We know that's particularly inefficient and we've got to do some investment work around that. So that's currently sort of in our CapEx programme as well. But yeah, that's where I would like to get to, but I don't know how long that's going to take, but that is the vision. And I'd also, in terms of then when we then progress our EPDs, if we do get to the point where we can go from, go to live reporting and we can get at the end of a product as it goes out of the factory, know exactly what the impact of that has been, would be fantastic. And yet I don't know how we verify that going forward if we do go to that sort of area, but it'd be a great way in sort of an evolution to make sure that we can get to that point to try and get much better in terms of our performance and understanding. And then finally, in terms of where we're heading, so we've got a short-term, medium-term and long-term plan. From a short-term perspective, I've already gone into ideas around data capture, data improvements. We do have design working groups in place at the back of this as well. So we've got working groups that are looking at materials, they're looking at mould optimization. So along our bespoke lines, we have to pour into moulds and for that product to then get through the line. So that's one area we're looking at. And then also manufacturing optimization as well. Again, it's taking people on that journey and making sure that they're bought into what we're doing and can influence what the performance of our product is. We are also working with suppliers and pushing them to try and get much better data as well. So that's another key point that we're looking at initially to try and drive along. The continual improvement piece, I'm really pleased we've got these EPDs through and we've now got them generated, but they are definitely our baseline and we know we want to get much better in terms of those areas. And a lot of that, when we looked at our EPDs, about 50 to 60% of the impact within the common impact within them, within our product, is from the materials. So we know the materials is a really key focus for us going forward. We do also have, so we've got some government funding from Innovate UK, and it's called, the project that it's called is the Deep Decarbonisation Complex Concrete Manufacturing Project. Really easily rolls off the tongue there. But that's the project that we've got going on with business in line with Cambridge University and AMRC up at the University of Sheffield as well, looking at how we can optimise our manufacturing performance and how do we become a low carbon manufacturing facility in the future. I definitely think in terms of when we get into that long-term low carbon manufacturing strategy, there's a lot that we need to think as a business is, do we focus when we know standardisation is giving us much better output from a carbon perspective and environmental performance perspective? Is that the way we go forward, or do we still have that level of mix between bespoke and between sort of standard products? So all these things and this information that we're pulling together, the EPDs have massively helped support sort of driving that and understanding where we take it forward. So yeah, we're really excited to see what the next steps are going to be when we get through that continual performance review, continual improvement piece. That's it.